Klepper's Corner, Today in History, July 24. Welcome to Klepper's Corner, Today in History, the only show where we time travel through centuries of power grabs, land theft, weird debates, massive screw-ups, moon men, and Supreme Court slapdowns, all without a flux capacitor or, let's be honest, basic human decency. Yes, today is July 24th, and you thought it was just another summer day to sweat through your shirt while pretending you still care about work. But July 24th has witnessed everything from Frenchmen planting religious lawn ornaments in Canada to Mormon pioneers fleeing persecution with nothing but faith, oxen, and a suspiciously specific real estate plan. We've got doom queens, exploding printing presses, rediscovered civilizations, kitchen-based Cold War showdowns, and one president who learned the hard way that even a White House doesn't come with a delete button. So buckle up, because today's historical rundown has more drama than a Real Housewives reunion and more unintended consequences than Elon Musk's parenting. Segment 1. Jacques Cartier claims New France, 1534. July 24th, 1534. Jacques Cartier sails into the Gaspé Peninsula, takes a long look around, sees some friendly Iroquois, and goes, "You know what this needs? A big old cross and some European paperwork." So naturally, he plants a cross like it's the neighborhood's first Starbucks and claims all of it for France. Nothing says friendly relations like spiritual real estate theft. Now, in Cartier's defense, he did chill with the St. Lawrence Iroquois for 11 days first. That's like a colonizer grace period. He then kidnapped 2 of the chief's sons and brought them back to France. You know, classic tourist souvenir: magnets, snow globes, human hostages. Cartier's symbolic gesture was less about faith and more about lawyers. In 16th century colonialism, putting up a cross was the equivalent of filing for a land patent. Except instead of zoning permits, you just had to ignore the thousands of people already living there. And what followed? French fishing ports, fur trading posts, and centuries of conflict. But sure, let's keep calling it discovery, because apparently, if you don't speak French and carry a cross, you don't count. Segment 2. Mary, Queen of Scots' forced abdication, 1567. Fast forward to Scotland, 1567. Mary, Queen of Scots, has the royal equivalent of a PR meltdown. After marrying James Hepburn, the bad boy Earl of Bothwell, who's suspected of killing her last husband, she gets hit with the medieval version of impeachment, shackled, miscarried in prison, and strong-armed into abdicating in favor of her baby son, James VI. It's like if The Bachelor ended with a coup and a toddler on the throne. Her fatal mistake? Thinking marrying the man accused of murder wouldn't backfire politically, which shockingly, it did. Add in the fact that she was a Catholic queen ruling over a Protestant tinderbox, and you've got a monarch-shaped piñata swinging in a storm of misogyny and religious hate. And those casket letters, possibly fake, definitely spicy, and used as justification for dethroning her. Basically 16th century emails with the subject line, "Re totally didn't murder my husband." This wasn't just Scotland's drama. It led to James VI becoming James I of England, uniting the crowns and giving us a royal lineage that, to this day, still doesn't pay rent. Segment 3, founding of Detroit, 1701. Now over to the banks of the Detroit River in 1701, where French explorer Cadillac, no, not the car, the colonizer, establishes Fort Pontchartrain. The idea? Build a French stronghold to out-British the British and control the fur trade. He picked a defensible bluff, brought some ribbon farms, a handful of Jesuits, and boom, Detroit was born. Yes, Detroit, the future land of Motown, motor cars, and NFL heartbreak. Of course, indigenous peoples were already there, but Cadillac encouraged them to settle around the fort for mutual protection, which is colonial speak for trade with us or face muskets. But Cadillac wasn't exactly the fun uncle of colonization. He was accused of abusing power, mistreating fur traders, and creating intertribal tension like it was reality TV. So congrats, Antoine. You founded a city and a mess.
Segment 4.
Mormon pioneers enter Salt Lake Valley, 1847. July 24th, 1847 was a very hot, very dry, and very religious day in what is now Utah. Brigham Young and 148 Mormon pioneers trudged into the Salt Lake Valley and declared, "This is the place," as in the place where no one else would bother them. They were running from mobs, bullets, and general intolerance after Joseph Smith got murdered in Illinois. So what did they do? Settle in a desert that looked like the moon and then make it bloom. Talk about Mormon manifest destiny. Brigham wasn't just a prophet, he was a real estate visionary. He organized thousands more into migrating, founded dozens of settlements, built irrigation systems, and pushed for women's suffrage. That's right, Utah women got the vote before most white guys knew what a ballot was. So yeah, when Brigham Young said this is the place, he didn't mean scenic. He meant no one will chase us here. And that worked until everybody else followed. Segment 5. Richard March Hoe patents the Rotary printing press, 1847. Also in 1847, Richard March Hoe gave humanity the gift of rapid-fire gossip with the Rotary printing press. Before this, printing was like churning butter with a toothpick. After Hoe, you could print 20,000 papers an hour. Publishers loved it. Ink-stained wretches got carpal tunnel, and the masses got flooded with news, ads, and cartoons about how much politicians sucked. This wasn't just innovation, it was acceleration. Hoe's machine turned slow, expensive presses into newspaper Gatling guns, democratizing information. Well, mostly. It still helped rich guys get richer and gave yellow journalism the tools to make up anything fast. But hey, if you've ever read something outrageous on the subway, you can thank Richard March Hoe. He made media faster, louder, and let's face it, occasionally dumber. Segment 6, Tennessee's readmission to the Union, 1866. July 24th, 1866, Tennessee becomes the first Confederate state readmitted to the Union. That's right, Tennessee got its hall pass back before the others even showed up to detention. They ratified the 13th and 14th Amendments faster than you can say we're not like those other rebels, and even gave black men the vote in 1867. Progressive, right? Well, yes and no, because almost immediately you had the Memphis riots. 46 black folks murdered by mobs, houses burned, churches torched. So early readmission doesn't mean early redemption. Still, Tennessee showed that with just enough compliance, you could rejoin the Union and skip the military occupation. It's like showing up to class, turning in your homework, and hoping the teacher forgets about that time you committed treason. Segment 7. Rediscovery of Machu Picchu, 1911. July 24th, 1911, Hiram Bingham III hikes up to a mountain in Peru and goes, "I've discovered Machu Picchu." And the locals go, "Congrats, bro. We've been living next to it since forever." Yes, this was less lost city and more ignored city until a white guy with a Yale badge wrote a book about it. Bingham was looking for Vilcabamba, got lost, asked a farmer for directions, and stumbled on a fully formed archaeological site that locals were literally using as a shortcut to work. Still, he had the PR team. So he brought the ruins into global spotlight, took some questionable souvenirs because what's an expedition without a little light looting, and cemented Machu Picchu's place in the World Heritage Hall of Instagram. But let's not forget, discovery is often code for white guy shows up and gets a grant. The site was never lost to the Quechua people, just to Western textbooks. And now, it's a tourist magnet so popular that llamas are charging for selfies. Thanks, Bingham. You turned sacred ground into the Inca-themed Disneyland of South America. Segment 8, the SS Eastland disaster, 1915. The SS Eastland, docked in Chicago for a company picnic, suddenly rolls over and dumps 844 passengers and crew into the river without ever leaving the dock. It's like if the Titanic sank in a kiddie pool during a barbecue. The cause? A mess of modifications. Lifeboats stacked too high after the Titanic disaster, and ballasts that were about as functional as Twitter moderation. The ship was top-heavy, overloaded, and as stable as your uncle's political rants at Thanksgiving. But hey, the inspection said it was fine, and who are we to argue with 1915's version of the DMV? Investigations cleared the owners and crew because, of course they did, and the ship was repurposed into a Navy gunboat. Because nothing says national security like weaponizing a floating death trap. The Eastland is a reminder that regulations need brains, not just bureaucracy, and that sometimes the riskiest part of your day isn't sailing into a storm. It's waiting for the buffet line on the top deck. Segment 9, signing of the Treaty of Lausan, 1923. July 24th, 1923, Turkey sits down with Greece, Bulgaria, and the remains of European colonial egos to sign the Treaty of Lausan. This treaty finally settled the modern borders of Turkey, ending the mess left by World War I and officially burying the Ottoman Empire. It was also the diplomatic equivalent of hitting undo on the Treaty of Sevres, which Turkish nationalists hated so much they basically went to war just to get a better deal. Spoiler, it worked. The treaty recognized Turkey's sovereignty, but only after most Christian and Muslim populations had already been forcibly swapped like baseball cards. It also promised minority protections, which is international law speak for we'll try, but no promises. So Lausan set modern Turkey on its secular nationalist path. But it also laid the groundwork for decades of tension with Greece, the Kurds, and anyone else caught between Europe's map makers and imperial hangovers. Moral of the story, treaties are like IKEA furniture. They look solid on paper, but if you ignore the missing screws, minority rights anyone, you end up with regional instability and a weird smell in the Balkans. Segment 10. The Kitchen Debate, 1959, Moscow. Vice President Richard Nixon and Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev square off in the most passive-aggressive kitchen in Cold War history. The kitchen debate was a spontaneous Cold War throwdown held not in a war room or conference hall, but in a model American home filled with blenders, frozen peas, and color TVs. Because nothing says ideological supremacy like a self-cleaning oven. Nixon's argument? Capitalism means choice, freedom, and the ability to buy things you'll regret at Sears. Khrushchev claps back, we have rockets and bread lines, who needs a dishwasher? It was like MTV Cribs Cold War edition. And the best part? It was televised. Millions watched these two men fight over microwaves like suburban dads at a Home Depot clearance sale. This moment didn't end the Cold War, but it did shift it. The new battlefield was the living room. The arms race was now an appliance race. And the winner? Whoever could sell the dream of modern life with the least amount of actual freedom. Segment 11. Apollo 11 Splashdown, 1969. And now, the moment that made the moon feel like a really distant Airbnb. July 24th, 1969, the Apollo 11 capsule, aka Columbia, safely splashes down in the Pacific Ocean, ending humanity's first trip to another celestial body and back. Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins return as heroes. Although Collins didn't actually step on the moon, he was basically the designated driver, orbiting above like the responsible friend at a rave. Recovery crews swarmed in, divers dropped into the ocean. The astronauts were quarantined for 21 days, just in case they brought back alien flu, or moon crabs. It was a technological masterpiece. America had done the impossible. Go to the moon, get back safely, and somehow keep their suits white in zero gravity. More importantly, it proved something vital. When faced with a Cold War space race, Americans could channel all their anxiety into building a space program faster than the Soviets could say Sputnik. It was a giant leap for mankind and a giant win for propaganda. And it made every school kid in America think, wow, astronauts are cool, before promptly getting distracted by Pong. Segment 12. U.S. Supreme Court rules on Nixon's Watergate tapes, 1974. Finally, July 24th, 1974, the Supreme Court smacks down Nixon like a librarian catching a kid tearing out pages from a book. In a unanimous 8-0 decision, the justices told Tricky Dick he had to hand over his secret White House tapes, the ones that basically confirmed he was neck-deep in Watergate cover-up. Spoiler, he did not have the authority to play finders keepers with federal evidence. And 2 weeks later, Nixon resigned, proving that the only thing harder than being president is pretending executive privilege means I get to do crime now. This ruling wasn't just about one guy. It was about checks and balances, the Constitution, and the radical idea that presidents should maybe, possibly, not obstruct justice. It also showed the power of journalism, public pressure, and tape recorders that didn't have delete buttons. So there you have it, July 24th, a date stuffed with more history than your high school textbooks ever bothered to teach. We've got colonial land grabs, abdicated queens, pioneering pilgrims, accidental shipwrecks, and Cold War kitchen brawls. We went from crosses in Canada to moon landings, from fur trading posts to full-blown constitutional crises. If history teaches us anything, it's this: people are messy. Power is addictive, and somebody somewhere always ends up in quarantine. Be it a queen, an astronaut, or a guy who forgot that tape recorders record. Thanks for time traveling with me. I'll see you next time on Klepper's Corner, where the past is always prologue, and the prologue is probably on fire. Stay historically suspicious.